All right, we are recording. Well, it is Wednesday, May 28th, 2025. Welcome to the Boulder Arts Commission meeting. I will call roll. Cheryl Cardoso is not here. Maria Cole here. Jeffrey Cash is not here. Jill Katzenberger is not here. Caroline Kurt here. Diane Benet yeah. Yale Weil. I see her online. Are you able to turn on your video and audio? Yale? I see that online too. I'm not seeing a response from Yale right now. But they did message the chat and say hello. So I will
give her a minute to connect.
They're all connected. Just the video and audio is off, so I can't turn it on. I'm not going to.
Okay. We're not going to be able to have a vote on the agenda then if we can't see her.
With three, we don't have quorum with three?
No.
Oh, okay, because it's chat. Oh, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Will you say you're here?
Here.
Great. Okay. I will now hand the meeting over to the chair for procedural items.
Excellent. Welcome everybody to the May 28th, 2025 Boulder Arts Commission meeting. We are called to order, and I will read the land acknowledgement first. The city of Boulder acknowledges the city is on the ancestral homelands and unceded territory of indigenous peoples who have traversed, lived in, and stewarded lands in the Boulder Valley since time immemorial. These indigenous nations include the Apache, Arapaho, Cheyenne, Comanche, Pawnee, Shoshone, Sioux, and Ute. The city of Boulder recognizes that those now living and working on these ancestral lands have a responsibility to acknowledge and address the past and must work to build a more just future. And with that, we'll move to approving the agenda. If anybody would like to make a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Second. All in favor? And we will approve the April 2025 meeting minutes, which were in your packet. Give a motion for that. Great. All in favor? That is approved. Great. And we will move to public participation. First, do we have anybody online?
We did have 2 people sign up in person.
Yeah, I just wanted to.
If anyone online would like to participate in public comment, you can raise your hand now.
Great, and then you can.
And I don't
share your opening slides.
I don't see anyone online.
Oh, great, thank you.
And then, so yes, so we did have 2 people sign up. So I will read the public participation guidelines. The city has engaged with community members to co-create a vision for productive, meaningful, and inclusive civic conversations. This vision supports the physical and emotional safety for community members, staff, and council, as well as democracy for people of all ages, identities, lived experiences, and political perspectives. For more information about this vision, you can go to our website, boulder.colorado.gov/services/productive-atmospheres. You can reach out to me, Ellie Kennedy, if you would like that online. The following are examples of rules of decorum found in the Boulder Revised Code and other guidelines that support this vision. These will be held up during the meeting. All remarks and testimony shall be limited to matters related to city business. No participant shall make threats or use other forms of intimidation against any person. Obscenity, racial epithets, and other speech and behavior that disrupts or otherwise impedes the ability to conduct a meeting are prohibited. Participants are required to sign up to speak in advance and use the name they are commonly known by. Individuals must display their whole name before being allowed to speak online. In-person participants are asked to refrain from expressing support or disagreement verbally or with applause. Traditionally, support is shown silently through American Sign Language applause. All right, and our first public comment comes from Jan Burton.
Jan, we'll have about 3 minutes for you and come over here so the camera picks you up. And the mics are toward the wall also. I'm sorry, where do we go? Right there is fine.
Yeah.
Right here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Kind of addressing the camera and us all at the same time.
My name is Jan Burton. I'm an art supporter, attender, and I was an organizer of 2A, the arts funding initiative passed by 75% of the voters in 2023. I'm speaking for myself tonight and for many of my friends. I house musicians, actors, playwrights, composers, singers, all the time in my basement. I understand their world and the world of the organizations that are hiring them. I house these artists because the organizations hiring them can't afford to put them up in Boulder. We're talking CMF, local theater, Betsy, CU College of Music, Mahlerfest, just to name a few. I also host a lot of fundraisers for many organizations. We have an amazing array of nonprofits in Boulder. The intent of 2A was to support these organizations, not to create an overhead fund for the city of Boulder, which can be used with the general fund. My position is very clear. Boulder's general fund should support the city of Boulder art staff and overhead. The dedicated fund should support the activities spelled out in the ballot measure. Should I read it? Or do you guys remember it?
I remember it too.
Okay, I'll assume you
Go ahead
guys.
for the recording.
But it's direct and grant funding for arts and cultural nonprofits, professional artists, arts education, venues and workspaces, public art, and multicultural programs. That's what the voters voted on. The community voted for that, and they weighed in also for their highest priority in the recent blueprint. And say 93%, that's where they want their money to go. That's what they want to support. So I urge you, our Arts Commission members, to be our biggest advocates in the city of Boulder, to evangelize the benefits of the arts, to advocate for fair and representative tax dollars, to support our nonprofits to provide the programming. Again, the city of Boulder needs to pay for the arts, Office of Arts and Culture, which I value greatly, out of the general fund, which we helped pass for them as well. 2A dedicated dollars should go to our community to achieve better outcomes. Your advocacy to help our art organizations, the residents, and our community will be deeply valued. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for all your work on 2A.
Thank
And
you.
if you want to say, I do have a question.
Okay.
Over there. I'm just curious, beyond us going to city council in our individual capacity, because we can't speak for the commission at the council meetings. And as we're out in the community, is there anything else that you found is a worthwhile advocacy road?
You can always write a letter to the editor. I think even your advocacy in here, because the city is a big hungry bear. It has lots of needs for money. And their narrative is quite strong that they don't have enough budget to pay for the arts. That's why they moved the city of Boulder resources into the dedicated arts. I would encourage you to push back on that. That's not the way Matt wants it. It's not the way Lauren wants it, but continue to just preach that message in a kind way. And then I think also, visit a lot of the arts organizations, hear them out, listen to them. Let's remember that they did fund this campaign. Many people don't know that the nonprofits actually each put in money to fund the campaign. So it's very It's disappointing to them. So, and just keep it in mind when you also vote for your policies. Yeah, thank you.
All right, our second speaker is Marie Juliet Bird.
Sorry. Thank you. Sorry. Sorry.
Okay, I'm Marie Julia Bird. I am the founder of the new local nonprofit.
Speak up a little so that we can
All right. We've been cultivating creative community on West Pearl Street for about 2.5 years. And I'm very grateful for the support from the city. And we recently received a commercial vitality grant for our annex space, our education space. And we are opening that space up to other local arts nonprofits who need space for rehearsals, for intimate performance venues, for small cultural events. So we just wanted to make that publicly clear. I wanted to invite everyone to our Sundays on West Pearl. This Sunday, every Sunday, all summer long, we provide free art programming for the entire community. And Betsy is going to become our resident theater company in the annex, and they'll also be providing free programming for the community. But I'm here today to talk to you about why arts is important downtown. Our other venues, our gallery space, a couple doors up, and we are one of the last remaining venues on Pearl that represents local artists. And in the 2.5 years that we've been downtown, we've represented over 250 local artists. And I think it's really important that artists be downtown because, first of all, artists need to be in the slipstream of visitors so that they have an opportunity to get eyes on work and have an opportunity to grow an audience and earn a livelihood. It's also important for the city to have that visibility, that front-facing public representation of our very rich and talented creative community. So we've been kind of holding that up on the West End in our gallery space, and I don't think we're going to be able to continue doing that because it's a just terrible business model. I've talked to Matt about this a little bit, and everybody knows about the affordability issues of downtown, and we can't compete with the corporate chains. It's not possible. So without a ban, a moratorium, or some kind of limitation on corporate chains downtown, we need another kind of solution of how artists can be downtown. And everyone's very excited about Sundance, and it's great. And people keep telling me this is going to be great for local artists because you're going to be in front of people who can, buy work. But it's not going to be possible if we actually are not going to be able to be in front of those people. Briefly, the reason that representing artists downtown is really challenging, it's not only about the affordability issues, it's also an echo chamber in terms of artists all competing against these local galleries. You have artists who are selling online or doing open studios, Firefly popping up all over the place. And that in combination with really high overhead is not sustainable. So my proposal is that there would be an additional grant in the same way that there is a grant for performing arts venues for Mackey and E-Town, for performing arts venues to be able to apply for that grant, that there be a commercial subsidy for public-facing venues for the visual arts. This would help with that 30% vacancy rate downtown. Artists could be able to, offer some money to the landlords. But the new local cannot continue to provide this showcase space for local artists who are all selling all over town. It's like a sieve. So we're going to have to pivot to regional representation, which is a big fat drag because I feel like it's really filled a niche within the community. But I'm just here tonight because we really need more support from the city and from the community in order to be able to offer that really valuable showcase space for visual artists, designers, makers downtown who otherwise have no access to that downtown, which is really still the commercial vein of our city. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. And I know that Creative Boulder has been doing a lot of work in speaking out and speaking to commercial spaces and trying different ways to address this issue, so we don't work also.
Yeah, and I would say ultimately, we need more capital investment downtown, because even with subsidies of paying landlords, ultimately you're just giving that money to the landlords. And we have no control over it, so I'm really advocating for a dedicated space downtown that would be collective gallery space for the local creative economy. So there we go.
Thank you.
Lauren, question. First, so how can this feedback be rolled into the rent?
Totally. I was just thinking that we did hear that from in the blueprint research, like we heard that pretty substantially about the challenges of being downtown, the empty spaces, a lot of that work. So I think it has been integrated. I mean, I'm welcome to like take your comments and send it to the consultants too. But I think it's pretty loud and clear, like the challenges that artists and creative organizations and for-profits are facing in the creative.
Yeah, there are only a couple of art galleries left downtown,
Yeah.
and most of them won't represent local artists because of this dynamic, that the local artists are all selling direct now, and it's like the proliferation of ways to buy and sell things. It's not stoppable, it's a monster. So it really needs city support, because no gallery owner within their right mind would represent local artists. It's just like, it's not a good business model. But it does have value to the community and to artists. So.
Yeah, I could just say I stopped by Tuesday and there was just a plethora of kids rolling around on the yard, just having a fantastic time.
Yeah.
And the work in the gallery is very sophisticated, and that's just a great cross section for.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And it's such a cool model where people come in, they discover a local artist that they're inspired by, and then can take a class from that person. So it's like really an ecosystem, but it's just too expensive. I mean, the rent in combination with that complicated dynamic of representing local artists, it requires more city support in order to sustain. Yeah, but thank you for stopping by. And I hope everyone come by every Sunday all summer. You can see kids on the lawn doing art, Betsy in the annex, and live music at Spruce. It's a pretty cool creative community down there. I hope to cultivate. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. And I just want the record to show that Joel Katzenberger is here now.
Hi, here.
Okay, and I don't see that we have any commission business, so we'll move on to the matters from commissioners with our liaison updates. Anybody has an update?
Go ahead. As many of you know, the Muller Fest was in town. I heard from Ethan that ticket sales were going well. I attended both the hike and one of the concerts, really well attended. And I think what struck me is people really come to Boulder for the festival. So they're following Muller and they're following our executive director, and really being this as a destination. So this is like the highest quality of execution. It's not often work going on. And Lucianne mentions that some of the artists stay in her basement. So she's very entrenched with the Muller Fest. BMOCA is continuing their plan for expansion. They finished the programming effort, which is having the square footage of the building. They closed at the summer closing of the Dazzle of Darkness, which was a spectacular show. I think you went there. That was a great show. And they have the opening of their spring show. And then they just have a whole number of events this spring. So the camps for kids and all kinds of fantastic things. So I recommend you stop by and BMOCA. Thank you.
I have a few. I'll just cut it real fast. I'm still waiting to hear back from some people. Can y'all hear me, first of all?
Yes.
Okay, great. I know the Spark has some things in the works, an in-concert version of Beauty and the Beast and a production of The Lightning Thief, which is one of my favorite musicals. So once I have dates for those, I'll send those along. And I know that the Catamounts is working on something, but I don't have the details and dates yet. So when I do, I'll let y'all know as well.
Thank you.
I can go. I went to watch the local lab, the lab production, the play by the local theater at the Nomad, which was super fun to see when they just do this reading. They're not in costume or anything. It was it was a really sweet play about this person caring for her elderly mom and sort of the mom being scammed continuously, and it was really sweet. And then we had just based on some of the grant proposals and things, so I went to support the JCC. They had a movie showing at the dairy called A Right for the Living, which was really great. And that was super fun to see. It was by a local documentary filmmaker. I met Todd at East Window, and I met whose name I'm forgetting now, person in Novo. I had a couple of meetings with her. I don't know why I forget Leah. Was it Leah? Yes, thank you, Sid. And then Cindy and I had a nice walk and met a few other galleries and walked around. We went to the new one, Top Hat Supply downtown, and then we just had a meeting with these three people to see, okay, well, they want to try to sell some art, like what is the city doing, discussions that people are curious which is great. Derry had the big fundraiser, which was a really fun one, and it was nice because that was just the few days after we voted the grant for Me Shanti, the dance nonprofit. They performed at the dairy, which was great for the fundraiser, and it was great to see them and chat with them. There was a super fun, first of its kind, an API month opening an art show at the dairy called Go West, and we had a VIP opening for that, and then we also had like just a general opening, and it was super well attended. There were several Asian artists from Colorado featured. There was a jewelry art show, and it was really beautiful. So if you haven't seen it, it is at the dairy through the end of the month. There was a couple other nice movies there that were showing, and then I wanted to go to the Canyon Theater because I actually had never been there. And then when I went there, I realized I had been there many times. So it was very confusing to me. But there was a really great speaker there, and it was cool. And it was interesting for me to learn that Canyon Theater is available for free to organizations and nonprofits and things. So I've emailed a few people about that. This is a great opportunity for you to do. It seats 108 people, so it's a great opportunity. So that's it. Thank you.
We shared, how the Dairy Center did a fundraiser, really successful.
Yes, we had a great fundraiser, and for those of you who don't know, I'm on the board. I'm no longer on the executive committee, and I'm just on the board. And we raised at that actual event maybe about, I want to say like $40,000 or so, something in that range. But overall, leading up to it with tickets and sponsorships and things like that, close to 200,000. And it's a big fundraiser, and we had so many local businesses that supported the dairy this year, and it was really amazing to see. We loved it.
Yeah, I went to the fundraiser. It was amazing. It was such a fun event. It was incredible.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I can go. Frequent Flyer Productions has their Pride Cabaret coming up on the 21st, which reminded me to share a couple of Pride related events coming up at the Junkyard. Parenting the Rainbow is doing a fundraiser on the 12th, so that's a family friendly event. And then Rocky Mountain Equality is doing their Queer Circus event on the 6th. So that's their big annual fundraiser. I attended Bruce's Film Commission Sundance party, huzzah, at the Boulder Theater. Lots of people. He was really excited about the attendance. I think they had 600 or 700 people show up for it. It's good to hear a couple members of Sundance get up and talk about their commitment to integrating into Boulder and excitement around that. And then also neat to see that there was a follow-up form that got sent out so that folks could directly communicate and share their interest in whether it was volunteering or jobs or partnering. So just, felt like there was some thoughtful effort there. And then speaking of Bruce, Junkyard is partnering with him and the commission on doing some cult film outdoor movie nights this summer. So the second Sunday, so we've got our first one coming up on the 8th, which was his pick, Eraserhead. It's pretty different.
Great, thank you. I was also gonna talk about Bruce's event. It was really fun and just the amount that event has grown is incredible. He's doing really great work with that commission. Then the only real updates I have from my liaisons are Eco Arts is just still trying to grapple with what's going on with the NEA. And are they supposed to spend all their money by the end of July or really kind of just trying to figure it out over there. And then T2 Dance, they're kind of in a lull right now. They don't have rehearsals in June, but they're gonna start gearing up after that to work with a Boulder-based artist, Peter Davison. And they're creating a physical theater / contemporary dance work premiered at the Dairy in October. So we'll look forward to that. And bye. Cool, so I want to move on to our working groups and any updates that people have from those. I'll just start since I'm talking. Jeffrey and I are working on how to implement better coaching for our groups on things like marketing and governance and fundraising and things like that, financial independence. And he's been gone, but we have now a draft of a 1-pager that he's going to review when he gets back. And then hopefully by next meeting, we'll have something that you guys can work with as you're speaking to your liaisons, and we might be able to plug some more people in on a certain topic from the commission. So plug them along. Anybody else who has?
I can add something, so for the grants and fundraising committee, I've continued to add things to a working document, there's even more opportunities in there. George and I were working on this, last year we talked about potentially adding somebody else, I guess more than anything, I was feeling like you and I could check in and just make a plan for if we're just adding more resources to the website.
Yeah,
rather than
totally.
like spinning our wheels on it further, because there just could be like, all right, let's just have a goal of the ones that feel Boulder local, like worth somebody's time, because there's also a pile of them that I started kind of like earmarking as like highly competitive versus, like,
Yeah.
worth the effort if you're a small organization for that example. So yeah, and then I had meant to send this to all of the commissioners. I'm wondering if it's okay for me to just add them to the documents, or rather than sending an email and potentially creating like the online meeting thing from happening, if it is okay for me to have a drive, or if I need to have you have a drive.
Yeah, it makes me hesitate just because I
Yeah.
think it's like any kind of continued discussion
Uh-huh.
about a topic that would be relevant, so.
Yeah.
It makes me nervous.
My hesitancy, so we
Okay,
can
great.
follow
Yeah.
up on that.
Yeah, and I think we can also talk about, which we had before, but reviewing our website and maybe
Exactly.
adding some sections to it that would make it more helpful and easier for people to figure out what to apply for, so.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. I'll make a note.
Lily, did you have any update? Anything you're working on?
No updates at the moment, but when I have them, you'll know.
Okay, no problem.
Thanks.
Excellent. I am going to turn it over to Sarah then. Oh, she's right there. Hi. And grant program.
Thank you. With the chair's permission, could I turn things over to Jill to talk
Sure.
about our meeting today?
Right. So I got to attend the individual community project meeting to debrief scores and responses. Yeah, I concur with everybody that has participated with the panel so far, that it's great to see. Yeah, I guess like the level of detail and thought that group is putting into scoring. A few things arose from that. So in the individual category, there could be
a little bit more clarity on what, first of all, constitutes a project. So questions around, does a project need to have a start and an ending? Can it be ongoing? Does that start to look more like a operating? There's still a project, but like, yeah, there's, so it's like, so as they're reviewing different types of applications, there were some that were clearly like, this is gonna start, this is gonna end, this grant would support the funding of this, versus ones that perhaps had been ongoing. So questions around that, in addition to even the nuances of individual. So it was interpreted by the committee that if it was a solo person, that was executing the project and the application, they'd fit in, but they would fit the individual category. In some cases, there were individuals that were still like overseeing their own LLC, not a nonprofit. And then we're also bringing in other participants into it. So some questions around, you know, whether or not somebody would be considered, whether it was considered an individual project. Recognizing, so kind of coming back to this like broader question around project, there isn't a grant opportunity for someone that has, like, if an ongoing project were to be considered more general operating, there isn't a grant category that would fit that type of need. Let's see. And then we felt, yes.
Did anyone get disqualified
There was
based on that conversation, or those conversations?
There was one application that was disqualified. There were a couple that still qualified, but the committee had remaining questions.
So I can clarify that.
Mhm, yeah.
There was an organization that applied in the individuals category that wasn't eligible. So they were removed before the committee, before the panel reviewed it. The panel wouldn't be able to they can't disqualify anybody, would have to go to the Arts Commission. So the disqualification, the ineligibility was actually before it got to the panel. And I think the panel was having this discussion with the ones that were eligible by our records, by our standards, right? Yeah. All right.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Okay.
For that clarity. We also recognize that in the individual category, the clarity around the project's goals and how to measure that came up multiple times. So there could be an opportunity here to help individual grant applications better understand, applicants better understand how to communicate their project in terms of goals. The questions don't directly ask for goals. From my perspective, the summary is a place in which it makes sense to identify, to like clarify, you know, what is the purpose of this project. But I don't know that that's necessarily spelled out. So there could be an opportunity there for us to create a little bit more clarity there. And then maybe even some type of a resource or link to a past application or something like that that helps an individual artist know how to communicate their project, kind of in this like grant language that the committee might be looking for.
Thank you so much, Jill.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I know there's a lot of uncertainties about the grant program next year, but regardless, I think as staff, we are dedicated to holding some sort of workshop or summit that would give advice to people about how to articulate and measure goals and that kind of technical advice.
Why is the uncertainty?
Because of the strategic planning and the thank you. I can also say that the funded by Boulder Art Office of Arts and Culture tag is live on the Boulder County Arts Alliance website. And with that, should we pull up the chart? So the action on the table is the vote on community project grants for organizations. And Yale, since you were in that panel meeting, is there anything that you would like to say about that?
I kind of just want to, my notes kind of just mirror. It's really just amazing to view this discussion from the outside, not being like directly in it. And I just think it's really impactful for them. This is their sole focus. and all of their energy and time is just on this one thing, which is doing the grants. And it's really cool to see because I think it allows them to have like such nuanced conversations and almost like philosophical conversations about the best way to go about it. Whereas like whenever we were doing it, it's like, okay, we do it, we approve, we don't approve, have to move on to the next thing. It's very like dun dun dun, we have to follow the schedule. And them having just like this little pod of time and focus to like really get into like these nuanced and detailed perspectives is just really great to see. It's awesome. And that like gives me a lot of confidence in their scores. So, yeah.
Thank you. Can I ask you a question, Yali?
Yeah.
You think the difference too, though, is, we're in a public forum.
Mm.
So I think that our conversations are probably more abbreviated versus they're not in a public forum. That's
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Thank you for attending.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was great. It was great to see and witness, yeah, the process.
So in terms of the community project grant applications, the commission may approve all grants per the panel's recommendation, approve individual grants while submitting specific questions, or postpone approval of individual grants pending the answers to specific questions. Slide, please. This is the breakdown of the scores. That is how craft is spelled with the lowercase t. Any questions about this?
No, I'm just noticing how close those previous six are. And then how close the next category is. Yeah.
Those three that are scored 35.2 are listed here in order of their community priority score.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you. And we've split the actions into two separate actions.
Great. We just need a motion on this. And oh, sorry, I apologize. We have somebody who's going to recuse themselves.
I'm recusing myself. Oh, no, just about. Oh. The process. Should I wait?
So what we'll do is we have a motion and then we'll have discussion.
Okay.
And then we'll take a vote based on the discussion and see if there's another motion.
Thank you.
Yep. So I'll need a motion.
I'll move that we approve the following organization 2025 community project grants for organizations, junkyard, and social.
I'll second.
Okay, and we'll open that up to discussion.
I wrote it down because I was having a discussion with Lauren and trying to fuel her a little bit. So I'm not saying this because it's not that I want to vote no or whatever. It's just more questions about this particular application. So on this grant proposal, Jill is the applicant. Jill is also the primary owner of Junkyard Social. She assigned the application, she leads the organization. And I am just trying to understand how that is not a conflict of interest. Even if she does recuse herself from this, she can still see the recording, she can still see people who vote for or against. She's very much involved in the panel and the scoring. She can see sort of who scores what. So, I know that there have been other arts commissioners who've had nonprofits and have applied and have received funding. I know that many of us here are on various boards and so there's, like the dairy's coming up and I'm happy to recuse myself, right? So I'm just trying to understand how this is not a conflict of interest.
Well, the city has conflict of interest rules, and I'll turn it over to Lauren if you
Sure.
want to speak to that or.
Sure, I mean, so you all sign on when do your, but you all sign on to follow with the good intent of following the city's conflict of interest rules. And those conflicts are the very bare minimum, which the commission usually actually holds to higher standards, but the bare minimum is that you as an individual are not getting money from that. And in this case, since she's associated with this organization, she's recusing herself. And the commission over time has always continued to allow commissioners to apply because the Arts Commission are, you're members of the arts community, you know? And you could certainly discuss it with the grant program going forward, but I would actually very much consider who would be coming onto the Arts Commission if anything that they're associated with would not, if that would immediately pull them out of being able to get funding for it, right? So that's where we have a conflict of interest. But that signed and like legal conflict of interest, if there are challenges with it, we can take it to hire in the city. Also, there is like a legal department in the city that we can talk to if we think that there is some kind of real breaking of that interest, you know,
Yeah.
or breaking of that, the best intent for it, right? Like, you're all involved in the arts community.
Yes, I mean, here, I don't think it's a matter of letting job. I think in this particular case, Jill is obviously an amazing asset to the arts community. The program is great, like it's not, there's nothing in it that is malicious or not, like it should get voted, right? Like whether it's her or not, it doesn't matter, because it's an interesting program and it's including a lot of children who have, you know, who are very neurodivergent and all these families and sort of representation and things that we all want and stand for. So that aside, you know, but Jill is Jill, and then there might be somebody else who shows up who's not Jill. And then, you know, what do we do? Because we have to sponsor it. So that's my concern. You know, I do think we should consider it. I think that because something has been happening one way, you know, it doesn't mean that it can't happen. We have to have some safeguards. Because not everybody's gonna be a Jill. Not everybody's gonna be X, Y, Z, right? That's just the case.
Is the concern that this other person who's not Jill will not recuse themselves or not
Well, I just,
disclose the?
I think my concern is not about recusing, because I think recusing is just, it's like a rubber stamp, right? Like, these meetings are recorded, like, she can go back, anybody who recuses themselves can still go back and see things and see who voted for or against. I think any other persons coming in may do this for commercial interest or like personal interest, and I think it's very hard. It might become very hard to be able to delineate something, right? And I have a nonprofit, it pays my bills. I want to get this grant going, and I need the money for this grant, I need this financing, I need this funding. And, you know, maybe my intentions are not as pure, right? Like, just as an example of somebody else, like. So I just think that it's, to me, it seems like if the arts commissioner is on that and signing off on it and submitting the grant and requesting for something for their nonprofit, I just think we need to have a little bit more sort of checks and balances. And that's all. Like, maybe it's something we talk about, something to think about. Maybe we bring it up. Maybe there's nothing there, and I'm just sort of learning and I'm bringing this up, and that could be it. But I just wanted to bring it up. With that being said, I think it's a great project, and I will vote.
I actually agree with you, and but I think we've already have the precedent under this grant cycle to allow for commissioners to submit for grants, but I agree that it's a conflict of interest, and I think it should be tightened up in the future. I don't think you should be applying for city funds and then sitting on that commission. I think I'm aligned with you.
And sitting on the commission, but also sitting on like getting some in-depth insight into the panels that are like voting for it. I think that to me is also. It just like, I would never apply to, if I was a nonprofit, if I was financially responsible for a nonprofit and getting paid and paying my bills. To apply, I wouldn't do it because, you know, obviously I'm not lucky. Right? And I can sway it in some way, right? Like, there's always bias. We think we're not biased. There is bias all over the place every single day, every single thing. And, you know, I just think we really have to think about it. We have to tighten it up for the next grant cycle, maybe not this, we sort of have this thing in place, but the next one, I really think we need to tighten it up.
Oh, I have some things I want to say too.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Leonid.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, so you think in general, anyone on the board during their time on the board should not apply for a grant?
And actually,
Now,
I'm gonna actually pause this conversation because I don't think that this is something that
When
is
it's gonna pause.
necessary for her
Yes.
to be recused
Mm.
from. I think that
That's
we
true.
should actually
Yeah.
close this conversation and open it up after we get through this vote. Have room for it, because I don't think there's any reason for her to be out of the room.
Agreed.
Okay, great. So hold your thoughts. I have something to add. Let's go back to any further discussion on the grant itself. If anybody has any other comments.
I mean, I thought it was an interesting grant. I liked it. I think it's a cool project. I think it's the homeschool community. You know, we were part of the homeschool community for a couple of years, and there's a lot of things that you have to dig around and find for the homeschool community, which is harder, and it's nice to see something creative that's there for these homeschool kids, and I thought it was a fun project for them.
All right, we're ready for a vote. Let's remind ourselves what we're voting on. Thank you. All right, all in favor? Okay, passes unanimously. Yeah, thanks. We'll wait for her to come back before picking up that conversation, and just briefly to wrap it up and then move on with the rest of the reports. All right, the rest of the boards. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. We started a conversation that we decided actually did not need to be recused from, so that's why it was taking a little. And I'm just gonna summarize, and if I misstate it all, just a question or an opportunity for continued conversation on the commission as to whether our conflict of interest rules are still making sense for the next grant round. We're already into this, and the impact of having somebody who sits on the commission applying for grants. So that's kind of what the conversation has been around. I cut Yaleid off. She was going to share some of her initial thoughts. We obviously are not going to get into a deep dive on it, but since we opened it, we're going to close out just brief thoughts, and then we can add it to an agenda or the treat later. Go ahead, Yaleid.
Yeah, I was just asking the clarifying question if that's what kind of the summary of the concern was, that anyone on the board while they're on the board not applying for a grant. Like if that's like the solution or the ideal being brought forth, basically.
My thing is not being on the board. I think if you're on a board of an organization where you're not getting financial compensation or getting paid, you know, I think that's very different. But if you are the organization and you're running the organization and your name is on the grant and you're signing up on the grant and you're on the Arts Commission, I think it creates a lot of conflict of interest applying for a grant from the Arts Commission. And I don't think commissioners who are getting paid to like full-time salaries and things like that and running these nonprofits should be applying on behalf of their nonprofits.
I had some thoughts. I think this is a great conversation. We'll love to continue it. My initial thoughts going into it are, from my perspective, I see three different things that are really acting as safeguards right now in our program. Aside from the recusal, we have the rubric, and any of the non-recused commissioners are required to be able to defend their score. And so if there is any sort of concern that there's been undue influence because there's a relationship there or something like that, that comes out in the score. Secondly, we're not allowed to have meetings other than one-to-one. So I think that also cuts back on the opportunity for people to have undue influence on the commissioners. And then the third thing that I would say is that we now have this committee who, you know, all the commission is voting on is whether they followed the process. We are not getting into the meat of grants anymore, and we're not, you know, we're not having an impact in that way on whether somebody is getting money from the city. We are overseeing the process and other people are voting on that. But that doesn't nullify the question as to who's on that committee. I mean, it just drops down. Go ahead. Go ahead, Yelly.
Oh, I didn't have anything.
Oh,
I was just
sorry.
nodding. You're good.
And
No, that was, you said it even better than I did.
okay,
Good job.
and then
You second.
Yeah, I will just say that, when I accepted the position, it was a question that I had as well, because I would not have become an arts commissioner if that would have prohibited me from being able to represent my organization that, you know, requires local funding to be able to survive and has. I'm so grateful for the projects that the commission has funded in the past. And when I joined, Bruce and Georgia also were representatives of their organization, so it was not, I was not the only one that was going to be applying for grants.
You know, but just, I mean, I just want to bring it up as something to discuss for the future, not for this grant cycle. Thank you for, sort of agreeing with me on this. I think that it's something to consider. I don't think we should be like, oh, it's always been this way, or we did it before, we should do it again. There's always opportunity to change and grow and to move forward and do new things. So, this is just something we should look at. I think it's unusual. I know that it's a small community, it's a small arts community, there's limited funding. I just think it's unusual. And so, I think we should just look at it.
we all agree on that and sure you have notes and.
Oh, totally. So I will say that we go through a very thorough grant process, program review of all of the input that we've been getting for all of this, from like how grants are structured all the way to, which we'll have even more with the blueprint changes for next year. Generally in October, we take all of this feedback. I'm putting it Sarah because she has like a massive 5-page document already of ideas and suggestions and updates. And we get together and talk through all of them to be sure that it's a several step process that we do at commission meetings to be sure that all of our adjustments are like agreed upon.
100%. This is less about the process. There's like no concern that the process isn't amazing and thorough. It's not about the process. It's just that if we are doing this.
Okay, we're gonna need to move on.
That's all we're sure. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing the
Don't worry
thought. We've got notes. We'll carry it forward. We'll discuss it further at another time. Sarah, we've got some more to go through.
Just the second.
Yes, second vote.
Good.
And we'll need a motion, please.
I didn't do the motion. I can accuse myself from dairy, of course.
Unless you are making money from the dairies,
$0.
you want to say.
If you don't mind, do you mind recusing yourself? Because it's more, you're like fiscally responsible for the organization. So I would
100%.
appreciate that. Thank you. I'm sorry, I totally skipped my mind on there.
So
New commissioner.
why don't we, let's just have you recuse yourself and we'll do the vote for just the dairy and then invite you back into the. Yes.
Drop it back on
I'll
the
make the
sign.
motion. I move to approve the following organization for the Dairy Center. Or, Dairy Arts Center, thank you.
Oh,
For
second.
The 2025 community project grants.
and I heard a second from Elaine.
Yeah.
Any discussion on this? No discussion. All in favor?
Lovely, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course. All right, we'll need a motion on this
I can do that.
one. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I move that we approve the following organizations for the 2025 community project grants organizations. Boulder Theater, Streetwise Arts, Community Roots Art Festival, and Renewal. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. And I just had some general feedback aside from discussion of the, can you put the list back up? So sure, I'll help me remember what I want to say. I guess for Sorry, I'm ahead of myself. I got one ahead of myself. We're good. The next line, please.
Okay.
Great.
All right. Now we have 3 arts education reports. Commissioners have the option to approve all reports, approve individual reports while submitting specific questions, postpone approval of individual reports, pending any answers to specific questions or not. These are the reports. Next slide.
I move that we approve the grant reports for Boulder International Film Festival, Boulder Philharmonic Orchestra, and Open Studios.
Second. Any discussion on any of these?
I just want to say I loved the booth report. It was really great to see just how thorough it was and you know how many kids participated and how well received, and they made it seem really professional for these kids. Like the backdrop was great, and I just thought there was so much effort that went into it. That this was really a nice report to read.
My comments were actually for the slide, so I'll just hop in. I was really impressed. They had 115 short films made by kids. Like, what a program, really cool. The Open Studios, I was just reminded of how difficult it can be for some programs in coordinating with the school system. And I saw that they ran into some issues, and so I was really glad that they were able to find someplace else, even though the program didn't look like they originally intended, that they even had a broader impact on 3 school classrooms. So that was great. And then the Boulder bill kind of just reminded me, we've been having these discussions recently about, well, what's the impact of the grant and like how many people and for how much money. And it just really reminded me that even a small impact for that community of people, like massive human impact. So I really appreciated reading that. Any other comments? Ready to vote? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
One more.
Oh, gosh. I forgot.
And
Wait a second.
Just a clarifying comment that this is now dissolved, so unlike the other 2022 operating support reports where it was a recertification for additional funding, this is merely an approval of the report in a procedural fashion.
Great. Anybody like to make a motion?
I move that we approve the grant report from Program Second.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Elated? Please in favor? We are through your section, I think.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. All right, Rachel and Brendan are up, and I'm gonna invite you to the table. I'm gonna get some book these. If you don't mind, are you able to come to this side so? Or they're moving the camera.
Oh, they're moving the camera.
Yeah.
Did it move?
Look at that.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all again. I do have a PowerPoint that I Okay. So I have an action item for you at the end of the presentation, but prioritizing conversations is part of the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan, and we have an artist to recommend to you for approval this evening. Next slide. I'll give you an overview. I'll talk about the 6 finalists, and then I'll offer you the recommendation to the panel. So the artist we're going to recommend is working within the BVCP under the prioritizing conversations, and this graphic I made up, is part, like, trying to help you understand what the planning process is like. It's very plannery speak. So it can be really, really abstract, but essentially what's happened over the last 6 months, the city has collected tons of input from the community. Like really big ideas, big concepts at a lot of different places, and then they've consolidated it and organized it into 5 or 6 big ideas. And that's in quotes because that's what they call it. That's the planner speak for that. And then now where we are is a moment of prioritizing the big ideas. So you might have conflicting priorities, and so the community needs to understand, they're trying to help the community understand that you can't have everything necessarily that you want because things might be in conflict, or you have to figure out what's more important and what's a little bit less important. So we identified an artist to help with the public art process within the prioritizing conversations part of the planning. Does that make sense? Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions. This is as like simple as I can make it. So for this public art process, within the prioritizing conversations, there's an in-person set of events that the city's community engagement office is going to host. And we also wanted the artists to do some kind of online engagement for several reasons. So each of the project proposals has both the online engagement and an in-person part. So these are the goals of the call. I'm not gonna read them. I'll let you read them. So it's a really interesting way of using public art to engage the community around the planning process. And so it's part art, part planning, which is exciting and also very tricky. Here's the selection panel members. 3 of the 4 were the same as the call previous. Kate Stanek was new for this call. And then the standing public art selection panel is the same people. The timeline is June through October, and you'll notice that June starts next week. So it's a really happening really quickly project. And so things are starting to sort of overlap with the last project and this one happening all at the same time. And the budget's $20,000. So here's the review criteria we worked with. On the left-hand side, the original staff review panel really cared about connections to Boulder. They wanted the artists to have an awareness around what Boulder is, what the challenges are. If they don't live here, maybe they work here, maybe they went to school here, maybe they raised their kids here, but they wanted the artists to be connected and be able to articulate their connections to Boulder. And then, of course, the artistically and socially engaged experience. Again, this is an art project and a community engagement project, so they needed to have both skill sets. Creative and methodological approach. This included submissions that have a clear sense of what they wanted to do online. Again, it's a part planning, part art, and it's online and in person. So we wanted to make sure that their approach included both a creative and also technological know-how to be able to execute that. Clarity of the intended artistic output is pretty straightforward. And then the impact on raising community consciousness around a 20-year plan, that's a little bit more philosophical, but still needs to come across in their application. And then the standard standing selection panel criteria is pretty straightforward as well. So we had 6 finalists. First was Adriana, and she suggested a fiber diorama series. She's from Boulder and her budget was for $20,000. And here's a sample of her work. It's okay. And then next we had Chris Caruth, who was suggesting a project called Between Today and Tomorrow with a combination of audio, text, and image pairings. And here's an example of his previous work with immigrant populations. He's in Boulder and his budget was for $13,000. Erika Pacha wanted to create a multimedia collage mural and her budget was for $20,000. Heather Schulte wanted to create a community coded quilt. So the image here is an example of something similar where each color represents a specific topic. And so if she wanted the community to come together and create a quilt based on the color coding of topics to colors in the quilt. Does that make sense? Yeah, it can get kind of abstract. And then John Bowe, Savannah Kruger, and Neil Yarnall, the trio, to create a pixel mural where the community members would submit images. This is, imagine trying to zoom into this. Each of the pixels in this mural would be submitted by one individual, and then the artist would create the collage based on each individual pixel representing one person's submission. Yeah, and their budget was 16,447, I think. Lastly, we had Creativity Alive, Marilyn Holmes, and she wanted to create a portrait photo montage for $20,000. And this image is an artist within the Creativity Alive programs creating a piece of art, and this is his piece. So Merlin isn't actually the artists themselves. She represents the organization that is Creativity Alive, who does cultural programming and does a lot of youth outreach. So it's a little extended in that way. That makes sense. And that budget was 20,000. And then there's a slide of all the panelists' feedback with lots of words. Lots of pros. I mean, there's 6 finalists for lots of great reasons. Fundamentally, I think the person who won put together a great proposal. The concept was really high quality. They got high marks for artistic quality. And they have experience doing community engagement in Boulder, online, with college students, with youth, with all kinds of audiences that the planning team and the community engagement team really wanted to reach. And so the person who they want to recommend is not only has a feasible project as an art project, but has a really strong community engagement background, both online and in person. Do you want to stay on this slide, or are you ready to see the recommendation? Okay. I know. It's the best part. So the selection panel recommends Chris Caruth. So his project is actually titled Photo Voice. And so, why is it scrolling?
It was me. I'm trying to get that to, I'm sorry.
He wants to do he calls it Photo Voice. And so people will submit images and video clippings and audio clippings, both online and during the events that the Community Engagement Office is hosting and producing, so that he can create combinations of text and image together that will mostly just live online. I don't think that we anticipate having a physical exhibition about it. So in terms of experiments in public art, I'm not sure we've had an only digital art project that I know of. So so that's exciting. It's an experiment. We're doing something new. I'm really excited about it, obviously. So questions, discussion?
Question.
Sure. And you were there.
The budget is, I was there, yeah, but the budget is $20,000 and this artist is proposing $13,000. Where does the other $7,000 go? Does it go back into, what fund does that go back to?
Well, so once we identified Chris as the artist, I spoke to him and he spoke to the community engagement and the planning office, and he revised his plan now that he actually has more information. And his budget is actually $20,000 now. It's $800 short of $20,000 actually. So it's kind of one of those things where this project is tricky because we're working literally in lockstep with the planning department. And when they don't know what's happening, we don't know what's happening. And so we open this call with a lot of hypotheticals and a lot of like, here's what we think is gonna happen. And I hope you can work with us and the planning department when they know when things are gonna happen and who's gonna be in charge and what that's gonna look like. And so between the time when the call opened and when we selected Chris, they had a lot more information than they did when we opened it. And so once they start creating a plan that's more specific to this project, he had a lot more sense of what he could do with the budget. And he used it and we have it. So I think that's great.
Thanks.
Sure. What did you think of the process?
I thought it was a really fantastic conversation, actually,
Mhm.
and you captured it very well. One image that really, I liked that you didn't have on the slide of Chris's was of someone at probably a bookstore and they had the kind of a book over their face. And the reason I like that is I just think in a community process, I don't think everybody is an extrovert and wants to have all their thoughts in public. And I thought that he was capturing a way to creatively capture those voices, but without, identifying the person. And I think even the book she was holding was poignant, but he captured that breadth of being able to hear the different voices and represent the government.
Yeah. And he's a professor as well. So he has sort of like a teacher mindset, I think. And I think that's gonna really lend itself to a really powerful project. So I'm excited about this one. And then there is a motion on the next slide if there's no more discussion, questions.
I did want to point out that ELA had to leave at 7 PM, so but we still have a quorum, so. It wasn't there.
Someone like to make motion?
It's a long one.
I move that the process was properly conducted and the selected artists for the experiments and public arts. The BDCP update prioritizing conversations, Chris Carew be recommended to the city manager for approval.
I'll second.
Great, any discussion? In favor? Unanimous? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just thank you for
2
managing
months in a
this.
row, I don't think you're gonna see me next month, so. Only see 1 month off.
We appreciate you working with given a very strange project, so an experiment, so
Yeah.
I appreciate
Fun
that
experiment.
so much, thank you.
I only have a couple slides, just some quick updates. The request for qualifications for our Central Ave Bridge Mosaic project is open until Monday, June 2nd. You can find more information on our website, so please share far and wide. This is for Colorado artists only. Our fire station 2 and 4 orientation meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, June 17th, so I'm looking forward with that project. Caroline, you're our commissioner on that one.
That's great.
And our maintenance assessment for our public art collection has begun for the 16 artworks. So I'll just be in touch when we get that report. And then obviously, if there's any major repairs, we will get started on those. Any questions about any of these updates? All right. Our Experiments in Public Art Lecture Series kicked off. Great start. Ana Maria Hernando had 2 amazing lectures at the Canyon Theater at the Boulder Library. Her lectures were just, her work is stunning and she's just so eloquent. And it was really a treasure to have her kick this series off. Her sculpture is in the conoid atrium, sort of in that main entrance to the library, and that'll be up until June 13th. These are the following 4 programs that we're hosting at the Canyon Theater. So be sure to jot these dates down. Tell your friends, tell your family, bring people. We definitely want attendance to go up as the series continues. The next 3 artists are actually from out of state, so they won't have the same sort of draw that maybe some of our locals will have, but their lectures will be amazing. And like I said, every lecture will also have a sort of a public art component or a community workshop. You can find more information on the website as well, but please help us spread the news. Any questions? Yeah.
Sarah Joseph Belknap, amazing.
Amazing artists. And they're going to do a lecture and a kind of a workshop in Canyon Theater, and then also an art making workshop at Sunrise Theater under the full moon.
Excuse me?
So
Yes.
you have to attend. Yeah.
That's very cool. I have a huge Instagram following.
So if you see our post on Instagram, share that.
I was gonna say.
Yeah.
It's really good about it.
Yeah.
You should.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. Thanks. All right, Lauren.
Oh,
We're already there.
so yeah, that's what it is. It was really fast. So our arts updates, you should have been receiving my biweekly emails. I think really the last, at this point, we are like, we as in the consultants are digging through the information. Since the last meeting, we went through a few behind the scenes steps of taking some of the initial kind of thoughts and recommendations, ideas about the grant program for next year. That's really the big focus right now. Taking them to the advisory committee, right? Getting some feedback from the advisory committee and then taking them through the racial equity tool, which is a tool that we use at the city to like look at any kind of potential new project or any unintended consequences or any like ways that we can move it in the right direction as far as racial equity is our big city goals, right? We took it through senior leadership who seemed pretty happy with it. He also gave us some really good feedback and insights. And so now we'll start building out the full like proposal really for the grant program. That's really the first part of it. A lot of it will be behind the scenes to start, especially the budgeting part, because that goes through a lot of different doors at the city, as you can imagine. But phase one is intended to end at the end of June. So we should be getting like some phase one materials, a report, some information from the consultants back to about their like guidance, like kind of closing statement. We also closed the phase two RFP. It hasn't been announced yet, so I don't think I can say. But for phase two, it'll be focusing on narrowing down the grant details. So generally every year, and I think I'm the only one that hasn't been through this process, but every year we do June, July, August, July, August, September. We kind of work through the feedback on the grant program from the previous year. You know, where do we need some help? What adjustments can we make, right? And then October, we haven't finalized enough to vote on it, but we can still talk through some other bigger topics and ideas. For this year, I'm hoping it goes sort of similarly, except we're essentially proposing a new grant program, right? So it'll be like a new ideas, new concepts, new budget scale and cycle and ideas that will integrate in all that feedback that we've been getting year round now already, right? Simultaneously, the consultants for phase two would be working on helping us get ready for Sundance, looking at venues, seeing what we need for infrastructure, that sort of thing, creative economy work. Also looking at venues, also looking at artists and also looking at our public art. So that was obviously a big part of our work that they did not get to focus on because of the timeline with our budget and the grant cycle. So do you have any questions about it? Yeah.
A lot.
It's fun. Yeah, it's been really fascinating. I think it's exciting.
I have two questions. Sure. So once the report comes out or the first phase comes out, is there how is that presented to the community, the artist community? So is there a formal presentation, is it a discussion, or is it just sort of published? How does that?
You know, the challenge with that, it's kind of the same challenge we've had with the comp plan steps, is that we need to see what will be presented as far as recommendations and things to figure out how formal we want to make the discussion, right? Because I think at this point, we haven't built out like the rubric for a new grant cycle. So if we start sharing out like how formally and how specifically we share the report, like if we do town halls or something like that, I don't know. It's like still up for discussion, to be totally honest. I don't know. It's something I do want to share. Like I want it to be as transparent as possible with this process, but I don't want to frighten people. I don't want to like get people worried about things that have not been finalized yet too, you know, because we have a whole phase two to sort out, right? So it might be I don't know. I don't want to say it might be anything. I'm not totally sure yet, to be honest. And we also want to get permissions from like senior leadership of what we are sharing, you know, so up to see.
It seems, my impression is it seems like it would be good to have a town hall or so people can ask questions.
Yeah, totally.
It doesn't feel so much like, here you go, just digest this and figure it out.
Yeah.
Instead, it can be more of a dialogue about here's where, the process and how you got there.
Totally.
And open up for questions.
Sure. I like that. I love that idea. If senior leadership is going to go for that, we'll have to see.
And it may be worth asking other folks on the committee, our committee that's.
Oh, yeah,
How do they imagine that would be best
Sure.
rolled out?
yeah.
And then my second question is a little bit of a tangent, but on the Sundance, who in the city is responsible or is communicating with the arts organizations about Sundance? Because I've heard some feedback that they've gotten some emails that were not received well. Let's say it that way. And it wasn't from this agency. It was from a different organization in the city. So it just seems like, I don't know, it seems like perhaps you all should be the liaison with the arts organizations about Sundance. Or part of that conversation at least.
Maybe that Visit Boulder, which
Yeah, I think
a
it
lot of
was-
times people think is the city.
I think it was Visit Boulder. Thanks. Yeah, that's what it was.
Matthew Kazansky.
No idea.
Yeah.
But the Office of Arts and Culture is part of that's gonna, be interacting most with Sundance and have the relationship between them as a new nonprofit and the rest of the community. And we've already started to talk about some of the executives from some Sundance attending summits and maybe having more conversational interactions. What I have heard from them is that they're very keen to make clear that they want to be a part of this community and generally supportive. And so they're going to take every opportunity to get. So I know Lauren a little bit to know that she will not let that go by and will be right up in front of it. So yeah, I think you and the staff will be important to make those relationships. The CBB is the one who's leading right now, but we're in this moment where there's contract negotiations going on, and it's as far as Sundance is concerned, early days. So I think we have a lot of time to sort of express to city leadership and to CBB and to Sundance how to do that best. So I just encourage you to keep that conversation.
I think what you said is correct. You know how to communicate with the arts organizations best. You know them, you know the things that they're concerned about. So I think it would be good to make sure that you stay ahead of that, so they're not getting information from another agency or Visit Boulder.
Yeah.
That's great.
Thank you. Probably that, I think.
All right. Any questions about the manager's memo? And if not, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Put it your spots.
And let us know when the
Sorry.
A prize.